All right, Amanda, thanks. Well, this September 11th will mark 14 years since the 9/11 attacks. My next guest's life was turned upside down that day. Fiona dropped off her daughter at the babysitter, and then came a dreaded phone call. Well, author and inspirational speaker Fiona is here with us this morning with how that call forced her to find her true calling. Fiona, thank you so much for coming in. We do appreciate your time this morning. I know your story. I want to be sensitive in the questions I ask you, but during the commercial break, you said, ask me whatever you want.
Absolutely.
People need to know what happened that day, and they need to know what happens during the healing process. Can you bring us back to that morning? What happened on 9/11/2001?
That morning, it was actually my daughter's first day of school. And so I dropped her off at the babysitter early in the morning, and as I was driving to see my first patient, because I was a home care nurse, my father called, and he was crying so hard that he couldn't say anything. So I thought I'd lost a family member. And then finally, I'm like, Dad, just get words out. And all he could say was Don Trade Center plane. And I just felt like I was going into shock at that point. And I tried to call my husband. I got his voicemail. I begged him to call me, but I didn't hear anything. And later that morning when I got home, there was a voicemail from him stating that he thought something had happened to the North Tower. He was getting out and he would call me on my cell.
He was in the South Tower?
Yeah.
You were watching TV, and what did you see?
The first picture I saw was a plane going into a building, and I thought it was a replay. And years later, when I was writing my book, I realized I actually saw Flight 175 going into the South Tower. And that kind of rocked my world. I mean, I didn't realize I'd actually seen that happen.
Now, we were in our talk during the break, you had mentioned that I said, when did you realize your husband had been killed in the 9/11 attacks? I expected you to say later that day or the next day. You actually didn't have confirmation of that for almost 6 months?
Yeah, and I was one of the lucky ones. I think there's still around 1,100 who have no confirmation at all.
Wow.
And so I consider myself blessed that I know for sure where he was.
Because during that time, you said that your mind would actually have you looking at homeless people on the streets of New York City, wondering if potentially one of them could have been him.
Absolutely. I was hoping he'd gone out for a cigarette, gotten hit on the head, and had amnesia or something. I mean, hope plays games, but hope is very powerful. And until you know something for sure, hope is there. And I lived hope.
Was all hope lost when you found out that he had died, or how were you able to find hope in a new way?
Knowing for sure allowed me to restart life again. Then I knew for sure that is what I had to do. So I started to create a new life. I was in therapy. I began looking at things differently.
So for folks at home that may be hearing your story, you've been able to turn this terrible tragedy into triumph. You have written an incredible book called In Full Voice. You're an inspirational speaker. You're doing things you probably never thought you would be doing unless something like this had happened to you.
Those were things I dreamt of doing all my life. But I stuttered as a child, so inspirational speaking was absolutely out. I became a nurse because I didn't think I could do anything else. And after 9/11, the writing came back, the speaking absolutely started again, and I fell in love with it. And so I feel like the gift for me of 9/11 is to be more of who I am and to let people know it's time to wake up. Share their story, the story they don't want to share. That's the story that will change somebody else's life.
What do you see when you're coaching people, working with people who are going through something? It may not be on the same scale as what you went through, but it's something in their lives that's very significant. What do you tell people to help them move forward?
Actually, it all begins with listening. I listen very intently, and it's really a conversation. Because when you can get all your feelings out, all your emotions out, that's when the healing process starts. When we hide our feelings, we're hiding everything inside, And it can create other problems. So when you can get your grieving out, your emotions out, your thoughts out, and somebody's listening, it changes everything, and it frees up space in here and here for you to think of something new. Think of who you really want to be, and do what you really want to do, and what inspires you, and what brings you joy in life.
I wish we had so much more time to talk, but we're flat out of time. Really quick, you and your daughter now live in Colorado. She's 17 years old now. Is she doing okay?
She's doing brilliantly. Her dream is Broadway. She's in her senior year of high school, and anything in musical theater, that child is in.
She's figured it out
Yeah,
already.
I love her. I'm so blessed to have her in my life.
And she's blessed to have you too, a mom that's inspiring and leading the way. I like that. The book is In Full Voice. Fiona Havlish, thank you so much for being so candid and sharing your story. And we will never forget Dawn and the other people who did not survive that day.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. We do appreciate it. All right, coming up on San Diego Live.